Yo, what's going on guys? Jivan back with another building tutorial. This one is going to have stuff for beginner and medium level players. If some of my other more advanced tutorials are just too tough for you, you may want to go back to this one and learn every single thing in this video. Every single build move and retake I show in this video can be used in actual games, and it can help you learn more advanced stuff in the future. Please consider using code JivanTV if this video helps you out, but let's hop into it. So we're starting off with two key things that you need to understand about building. First off is understanding crosshair placement. Depending on where you look at a wall while placing cones and floors, the builds will either place above or below. It's also very good to know that cones place very far from you. They are the farthest placing build, so you can use that to your advantage in a lot of situations. It's also very important to note that you can place walls way above you. This is a building strategy called Highwalls, which we're going to toy around with later in the video. And you can also place walls below you if you look down. This will all come in handy throughout this video, so lock that into your brain. We're starting out with the absolute basics and fundamentals. So this is called ramp rushing. This is when you're starting a build fight with an opponent. When you're ramp rushing, you want to add extra builds to your ramp rush. So you can add walls behind your ramps, and you can even take it a step further and add floors underneath your ramps. This makes it harder for the opponent to shoot you out. I'd say the best order to do this in is ramp, floor, wall. After you've mastered ramp rushing with walls and floors, you're set to learn 90s. 90s are the fastest way to get to high ground. It's basically the same as ramp rushing, but you're turning to the side while doing it. So you place the walls and floors underneath you and then ramps to top it off. There's one issue though. If the opponent's above you, they can shoot you pretty easily. So a little trick that I like to use is, let's say the opponent's on your right, place walls to your right before jumping onto a ramp. Similarly, if they're on the left, place walls to the left before jumping onto a ramp. This makes it so that you're blocking your angles while building up to high ground. Another trick you can do with 90s is called infinite 90s. So there's a thing called jump fatigue in the game. After 2 jumps, you're going to have jump fatigue and you cannot jump and do 90s anymore. So the workaround to this is just like you're seeing on screen. You do 2 90s while jumping and then 1 90 without jumping. The way you do the 90 without jumping is you position yourself on the back of the ramp so that you don't need to jump to get up the ramp. Next step on your building journey is learning the Thwifo Cone. The way you do this is you swing walls behind you and place a cone on top of the walls, just like this. Now while learning this, you gotta pay attention to your crosshair placement. Like we talked about at the start, if you look too far down, the cone is going to place in the wrong position. So just keep practicing until you can nail that cone in the perfect spot every time. Now, along similar lines, we got the front side Thwifo Cone. This can come in handy big time when starting a fight. Let's say you're ramp rushing the opponent, and they end up getting 1 layer above you. Do a front side Thwifo Cone, and this will block your angle. From there, you can try to go out the backside and get above them, or simply create a box and wait for them to pressure you. So at this point, you should probably start practicing single, double, and triple edits. This is something you're going to want to practice every now and then until you can get it down. Simply run up a ramp and practice editing through floors, cones, and both at the same time. Once you can get a double edit down, that's when you want to start practicing a triple edit. When I'm doing a triple edit, I like to double edit through the floor and cone and then place a wall and edit a triangle in the wall. This combo can be useful when you're pushing straight up to an opponent on high ground. By claiming all 3 of these builds, you can get right up into their face and hit them with a fat pump. Now, if you're struggling to do single, double, and triple edits, try practicing just editing a floor as fast as you can. If you use confirm edit on release, practice pressing the edit button and the select edit button at the same time. Once you get this timing down, your edit speed will double. So, like I mentioned at the start of the video, there's this thing called the Highwall. There's lots of ways to use Highwalls in the game, and this is probably the simplest form. You're just building up on a ramp and you throw Highwalls up on the top of your ramp. This can be useful when you're pushing up to an opponent and you want to block their angle so that you can get up a few layers. Next up, we're going to try to tackle side jumps, and I gotta warn you, this is one of the more challenging topics in the video. So what you're seeing right here is the simple version. You just jump around a cone and land on a floor. From there, you can keep ramping up if you need to build higher, or do whatever you gotta do. If you land in the middle of the floor and look down while placing ramps, it'll place in front of you and behind you. So this is where it gets tough. The most useful form of side jumps are elevated side jumps. It's where you land on top of the ramp instead of just on the floor. When doing these type of side jumps, place the floor first and then place the ramp. The way you're going to land on top of the ramp is making sure you land on the right spot. To get on top of the ramp, you need to land at the bottom of the ramp. The reason this is useful is because it gets you up an extra layer in the same amount of time. The last one we're going to look at here is landing on a ramp faced in this direction. It's the same idea. You place a floor and then a ramp and you land at the bottom of your ramp. It's going to take some time to get this side jump down, but with enough practice, you'll get there. Just make sure you take a break if you're really struggling with it. Come back the next day to it. If you want to add a little extra spice to it, you can practice placing walls through the cone before doing the side jump. This just adds an extra layer of protection. Now congrats, you have made it to the next part of the video, which is tunneling. So you know about boxes. You're sitting in a box, there's builds all around you. Tunneling is creating box after box connected to one another. The best way to do this is place floors in front of you, the walls around the side, and then edit that front wall. This is called a full tunnel. You're placing every build around you. There are a lot of other forms of tunneling out there used for different situations. Those are going to be in a different video. I recommend learning the rest of this video first though. Next up, we're going to talk about some of the best techniques for boxing an opponent. Let's say there's someone on the other side of your wall. The best way to get them boxed is edit a window in your wall, place cones above and below them, and then walls to the sides. This is the best way to do it because you can use the window as a right-hand peek. If you stand behind your window while doing this, they can't hit you. Now, if you're trying to box somebody while you're on the move, it's really good practice to throw cones in their direction before anything else because, like we talked about at the start of this video, cones place further than any other build in the game. So you can get cones on them and then go to place walls around them. If you practice doing exactly what I'm doing right here, it'll help train your muscle memory to place cones first and then get the rest of the box built. If you've ever heard of a Mongraal edit before, this is what it is. You first place the ramp over the enemy and then edit the ramp to expose them. This is a very useful move, but there's a better version. You should practice doing this through a window, because like we said before, if you box an opponent through a window, you can use the window as a right-hand peek. Right-hand peeks will give you the best chance of dealing damage to the enemy without having them deal damage to you. Now, if you're boxing somebody from above, this is a good way to do it. You double edit through a floor and cone and then place walls around them and a cone in their box. From there, you can take a peek shot from above. And if you're boxing someone from below, you want to place a wall in front of them, edit a window in the wall, and then place walls around them and a cone on top. Now you're probably wondering why I'm leaving that left wall open. It's because if you're using the window as a right-hand peek, you can't place that wall, or else you'll be exposing yourself to shots. The next useful topic is how do you create room to heal? It's important to practice placing ramps behind you while running away so they can't shoot you from behind. Doing this creates more layers that they have to break before they can actually catch up to you. When trying to get heals off, they're going to be cycling you like crazy. So you really just want to tunnel away until you get enough space created and enough layers created to get your heals off. Building around cones. This is a useful trick for if an opponent gets a cone over top of you or you just need to build around a cone. All you do is place walls behind your ramp and then a wall out to the side and connect a ramp to that wall. From there, you can just keep ramping upwards. Hey, guess what? Those are basically all of the fundamental techniques that you're going to need in Fortnite. You've made it to the next step, which is high ground retakes. Let's start out with a simple 180. This is what it looks like. So you have to start out by placing ramps above and below you. To do this, you can just simply do a Thwifo Cone and start placing ramps above and below you. Then place cones on top of your ramps, turn around and place walls behind you and ramp it off at the end. This is a really good thing to do after doing the 180 if you need to get up a few layers. Here it all is in slow motion. High ground retakes are really meant to be flexible. It's good to start out with a really structured retake, just copying exactly what I'm doing, but eventually you want to get to the point where you can kind of change the retake as you go. That way you're very, very flexible while in a build fight. By the way, what you just saw is the same retake from the opposite side. Next up is a very, very similar retake. So for this one, you just place a cone and floor at the end of your ramp, double edit through the cone and floor, and then do the 180, exactly like the last retake. And if you need to get up a few more layers, you can do the same exact combo that I showed you before. This retake starts out with you double ramping just like before, and then you turn and place a ramp and cone facing the opposite direction. If the enemy is behind you and you place that ramp and cone, it completely blocks their vision and gives you freedom to do whatever you want. So I'm showing you a few possible retake combos that you can do after placing that ramp and cone. The first one that I showed was simply you just keep going and you do 90s. This one is very similar to what we were learning before. You place a wall and it's like you're doing a 90 on that wall, just to get up an extra layer. And then this last one here is doing the high wall that I showed you earlier. First, you turn around and you place that ramp and cone, and then you do the high wall. From there, you can go any direction you want, really. It blocks the entire vision of the opponent. This was the first retake that I ever learned. It starts out just like the first retake we learned. You're double ramping and you place cones on top of your ramps. Then you turn to the side and you place a ramp, a floor, and then another ramp. Following that, you just edit through the floor and keep going. However, that retake is not very protected. If you do it like this, it can be very useful. It's just like the first version I showed, except you place some extra walls to block your angles. So if the enemy's trailing behind you and you do this combo right here, it should get you over top of the opponent. Next retake is very similar, except instead of doing a ramp floor ramp, we'll be placing cone floor ramp, and then you can simply edit through the cone. This retake is also not very useful, but it's important to learn because it's a stepping stone into more complex retakes in the future. Those are some great beginner retakes to start out with. Before we end this video, I'm going to give you guys a taste of the medium level retakes. To start off, we're looking at the most useful form of a high wall, the side jump high wall. When doing a side jump, swing walls straight upwards while you're in midair, then land on a floor and build a ramp. From there, if the opponent's on the other side of that wall, you can get them boxed. Next up is that side jump we talked about earlier into a 180. This can be very useful to get up like 3 layers in the matter of a second. If you do this fast enough and when the opponent does not expect it, it can catch them off guard like crazy. The only thing is if they do expect it, they might have a shot on you from above. So you gotta be careful of when you use this retake. Here's a good example of it being used successfully. The last medium level retake I'll show you guys is cone flipping. If you edit a cone and place a wall and then another cone on top, you can then flip the cone that's immediately above you and land on top of it, and you can do this on repeat. It is the safest way to build up to high ground, and I use it in almost every single fight. That's it for this video, guys. If you want to learn some more medium level retakes, go ahead and click that link on your screen right now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, sub if you're new. I'll have a lot more content like this coming soon. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.